Today, our colleague Trey Broadhurst from biology. I want to thank you, Trey, for your patience. Trey actually went on sabbatical over a semester ago, but we weren't able to get him on the schedule until now. So thank you very much for waiting.
But he brought his whole wardrobe.
Yeah. We all get a shirt.
Waiting a long time.
We all get a shirt, I think.
He's raffling. I offered him $2 for it.
Really?
Well, Trey's title today is Mongoose on the Loose, Tales of Invasive Species from Around the World. It's a report on his sabbatical research in Hawaii.
Yeah. All right, thanks very much. So, thanks for coming. It's, it's humbling that, your colleagues would come out on a busy Wednesday.
Yeah, but we haven't started brewing yet. So.
Yep, and these are just, these are for if you feel like moving, I'd rather you read. So, there are a couple of local things they put together y'all can take a look at. Now those you can take home, not the shirts. So I would like, I set it up, it's not so much interactive as some other CAC discussions are, simply because, this is me presenting about what I did while I was there. So I want to tell you about just Hawaii in general, some background information on invasives, and then tell you about my work, and if we have time, tell you about Eco Islands, and then we'll finish up with a local issue or two if we have time for that. So, Hawaii is, of course, the 50th state. Sorry, Joe. It's not Alaska. And so, the big island of Hawaii, right here, and we were right there, is where the park was that I was volunteering. So if you're not familiar with the Big Island, you got these big volcanoes here, two of the biggest mountains in the world going down to the sea level. And the winds come in from this direction, and so this from about, you can see here, kind of splitting right down here and down to here. This side of the island is wet. This side of the island is dry. So Kona actually means leeward in Hawaii. So we're on the dry side. And there are advantages and disadvantages, not as lush and tropical, but then the water's clear because you don't have the runoff, etc. None of that ended up mattering much with the work I did because it turned out to be terrestrial. So you may, I'm sure you're familiar with this particular species introduced to Hawaii in 1937.
Is that a species?
It is, that's what this is for. And so now Hawaiians are a unique breed. They are serious about spam. Whereas here, you go get a breakfast taco at a convenience store, they're going to have a block of rice and a block of spam and a little, tied with a little bit of seaweed. That's what seemingly half of the island eats for breakfast every morning. So, and it's just prolific. Look at all the different, here I'm assuming you have spam, maybe low sodium spam. And this is just, just aisles and aisles of this stuff around the island. It's just amazing how much it's
I saw that on Hawaii 5-0. They were doing an episode where this guy's coming up with a breakfast burrito and it had spam in it.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was kind of there.
Yeah.
Spam and bacon,
But look at all the flavors.
I know.
Yeah. I didn't realize it had all that stuff.
Tabasco's in the deal here.
Sorry.
So 70th.
Yeah.
Well, I am, well, I talk about not native Hawaiian in that regard. So some things when we got there, some things we expected, right? Like Kona coffee, which was, that's where our older daughter Lauren actually ended up working for a coffee farm. Waterfalls, lush vegetation. This is on the other side of the island, as I mentioned, as you can imagine, just a little road trip. Active volcano there, Kilauea. There's the caldera floor you can go down to. Didn't actually see any lava flowing, but you can see the red glow in the evening. You do it. It kind of pulls up and then usually breaks through somewhere and leaches out, and then it builds back up again. And so while we were there, it was pooling up, nothing actually flowing. Of course, coconuts and other kind of tropical-looking shrubs and trees everywhere. Hibiscus and just all sorts of everything grows in Hawaii. Pineapples, just everything. We found this. This one is not from our yard and the house we rented, but they had one come up. I mean, just stuff just pops up all over the place. Louise, that one's for you. The little paint right there. Yeah. Now, some things we didn't expect, like a turkey on the roof, for instance. While there are wild animals running loose all over Hawaii. These don't seem to cause a problem, but they're about as common as you might see a neighborhood cat walking around. There's a turkey wandering around the neighborhood.
Are they native?
No, they're not. And then something called what I refer to as lava loans, because we kind of fell in love with the place, like during the months we were there, and looked at pieces of property and things. And your financing and insurance is based on where you are on the island. And so in terms of, can you kind of figure out what's going on here? Right? If you're in the 1 or the 2, some places won't even insure your home. In fact, while we were there, Kilauea was flowing, kind of not where we were, but out a little bit and consumed, if you will, the last home in a neighborhood that had been receiving lava flow, kind of inching along, and that was the last. He hadn't been to his home in like 2 years because it had been surrounded, and then it finally consumed his home, and so then he got the insurance payout as well. It was right here in this area, and so here's kind of another map, kind of showing you that here's the safest area up at this end, so just opposite, so the kind of expected to, flow with lava before too long. And massive calories, oh my gosh. A huge scoop of mac salad and 2 scoops of white rice with a plate lunch. And then, can you see that is a fried egg on top of the meat and gravy. And this is a typical plate lunch. This is after the spam and rice for breakfast. This is a typical plate lunch. I mean, wow. Wow, we did some serious carbo loading. And then for the first part, while I was working at the park, I was burning it off. After that, it just went right here. So my talk and my research was about invasive species. And so if you're not familiar with invasive species, they're plants or animals that are somewhere where they're not native, and they've gotten there and they're causing a problem. So some things are non-native, but they're not causing a problem. Invasive species, pretty much by definition, means that they're causing a problem. And they can be eating things they're not supposed to, or just out competing for resources, or taking up space, or what have you. And so, and this one, this is a public service announcement I thought was really cute. It's nice and sharp. It kind of explains the basics for you. Hey Tracy, can I turn the volume up?
I think it's maxed.
Okay, no problem.
We had it turned up as high as we could.
This is just music. I'm just thinking for the other ones. Okay.
There was one running across the street.
Wild back here in the back.
Here comes another.
Your part.
Does Hawaii have any snakes yet?
No.
Oh yeah, that's right. No, that's right.
So, and of
Across our fingers.
course, Guam has the brown tree snake,
Yeah.
which is decimated. And old timers will tell you that just a walk around the island is so different because there are no birds.
Yeah, no.
soon.
Yeah, the brown trees.
Because they're just get, and it's just, let's face it, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
One pregnant female is gonna just devastate the.
Look at the pythons in Florida.
Yeah.
Well, Rob goes to Guam a lot. They've got the specially trained dogs that sniff out the airplanes.
Right.
And then they have a person whose only job is to walk around the airport and check the snake traps.
Oh, right. Because I understand, one way they move from place to place is they climb up into the undercarriage, up the wheels.
Yeah, so they've got specially trained dogs.
Okay. And I appear to be stuck.
Did you click forward?
I thought I did, yes.
Escape.
Okay, well, apparently that particular sequence of clicking worked. So, the brown tree snake has just absolutely been just one of the most devastating invasive species around. It's a good example of what we're talking about. And of course, invasive species can be transported by Mother Nature or by humans. And so, of course, actually, we were at lunch the other day, and Kathy brought this up in terms of what does a tsunami have to do with invasive species. Of course, the tsunami in Tohoku, washed so many, cubic yards of material out to sea, some of which floated, and that floating debris is traveling across the Pacific, and I'll show you some more information about that. And it's already washing ashore. There was an article about a floating dock which floated ashore on the Oregon coast, and immediately the biologists there started, saying, "Wow, we've never seen these species before," and of course they're worried as to whether they might take hold and establish breeding colonies. And because they're not native, there are no native checks and balances, right? There are no native predators or what have you. So kind of scary. I mean, as beautiful as that sea star is, it's not native to Oregon. So this animation shows the debris path, the projected debris path over the 10-year period from 2011 to 2021. And you can see that this is about 2 years right here, but it's already well ahead of schedule because some of it's already reached. And then watch what happens. Hits Hawaii, but then it kind of loops around, and then it doesn't show it, but then it's just projected to just do this forever. There's a water current there called the Great Hawaiian Gyre, and it's already full of plastic and materials, and now the tsunami just added more to it. So it's just right there. It's just going to continue to spin around, and it's a little there's some argument as to whether some has already come to Hawaii. There are other currents that bring things right there to the south coast of the Big Island, and we visited there, and you could not even see the shore. I mean, it was just solid debris, nets and buoys and fishing line all wrapped around everything, and people come every month and have this huge cleanup and haul away tons of this material, and it just washes right back up. And so there's so much material, I guess you'd almost need something stamped like 2011 Japan.
So if they're continually cleaning it up and it's a small land surface, what do they do with it? How do they dispose of it?
That they did not mention that part. I don't know. If some of it, I suppose, they could incinerate, because it'd be very expensive to haul away. Landfills or something, because they have other waste disposal for residents and such. It's not a very populated island. It's only about 150,000 people. That's a good question, but I don't know. And of course, humans, sometimes the introduction is intentional, like kudzu, sometimes unintentional. I had a family in Mississippi growing up, and I'm familiar with this. Just you're kind of cruising down the road, and there's just where here you're driving down the road and there's a telephone pole and telephone wire. There, it's just everything's green. It covers everything. It just overgrows everything. If you're not familiar with it, it's native to China, brought over here by for ornamental purposes, but really actively brought over. Something like 85 million seedlings were planted something like 3 million acres to fight soil erosion. The problem was the timing, because the boll weevil, which is another invasive species from South America, came along and devastated the cotton farms. The farmers were forced to urban areas, left the farms abandoned, and this is what we had left. And it's growing and growing and growing. And you know, estimates are, it's kind of like the federal budget. In that, you know, here's what we're trying to eradicate it, here's what we're taking out, and here's how fast it's growing, right? And we're taking out and growing. And so we're not keeping up with it, and of course, so it's really a vain effort to try and keep it in check. In China, of course, the cold weather knocks it back in the wintertime. In the south, it just goes year-round. Also intentional, the mongoose, brought over by the sugarcane industry in 1883, this was not well thought out. Mongooses are active during the day. Rats, of course, are primarily active at night. As it turns out, as you might imagine, these native to India animals preferred other things besides rats, chasing rats at night when they were asleep. So they ate the native birds. Of course, now Hawaii and New Zealand don't have any native mammals other than a couple of species of bats and some marine mammals. So eating the small mammals is not that big a deal unless it's a pet. Reptiles, of course, no big thing there. Insects, fruits, and plants. But then you have eggs and hatchlings of, like the state bird is the nene, which is a ground nesting bird. Ground nesting bird, just like in New Zealand, because you didn't have any native mammals, so there was no selective pressure to nest in the trees. Now you bring mammals, and the native bird populations are decimated. And sea turtles as well, like they didn't have enough problems. And they're well established. I mean, you can see this about how frequently they can breed and how early they can start. And plus, if you've seen just pictures of lava, you've got crevices everywhere. There's just no way to get in to get them, unless you're going to be like the old lady who swallowed a fly and bring in something to chase the, you know, of course, that just goes on and on for forever. And now, same thing with the kudzu. They trap them, and et cetera. And so in the following video, one of the rangers at Kendall is talking about the mongoose. So I hope you can hear him.
Funny thing, the rats come out at night.
If you import snakes, would it just, you know, balance out?
Yeah, those are nasty.
Oh,
Well, you know, you would hope.
I've heard the
He said
term.
it.
You can only hope that if snakes were unintentionally released, that a mongoose would eat it before it established a breeding population. So maybe now maybe the snake, yeah. Well, I mean, see how fast it is though. I tell you what, when I was taking that video, when I didn't jump because I'd already seen it do that when I was taking still photos of it, and I thought, wow, he's coming out of that cage, isn't he? And there, just. Now, you will see these around about as often as you'll see a squirrel around here. They're that common. Just walking down a pathway. If we went for a walk, almost a given that you're going to see one. Just, you know, walking across the path, not minding you. I mean, this one was caged up and not happy.
So they're not that mean?
Only if cornered, apparently. So, yeah. So the whole snake thing. Now, Kauai, one of the other popular island destinations, has avoided bringing mongooses over, and so they, I guess, are on the one hand better off in a lot of regards. On the other hand, are more prone to an invasion by a snake infestation. So we'll see what happens. Coqui frogs. This is Hawaii again, and the problem with these are they're just so loud. They've been measured at like 80 to 90 decibels, and you have two very, it's kind of like the Dallas Cowboys. Nobody's lukewarm about the Cowboys, right? I mean, you either love them or hate them. And same thing with the Coqui frogs. I don't mind them. I thought it was kind of lyrical, and I went to sleep easier. Now they're mainly on the other side of the island, so it didn't really matter. Like we just took a couple of overnight trips over there. But I thought it was quite nice. And people in Puerto Rico, apparently, where they're native, bring CDs of this sound to go to sleep by because they're so used to it. And so they're revered in Puerto Rico. Well, they were brought over accidentally.
They're not
and
controversial.
some
Are they controversial?
What's that?
The coqui frogs. Aren't they real
Oh, they're
controversial?
well, they're so controversial because you have some people are like, oh yeah, these are our kind of, our adopted state frog, and other people are like, I can't sleep. So especially visitors, and so people on that side of the island, like you're running a hotel, and it's on their website. Be aware that and you go to the lobby and you can get like you forgot your toothbrush and toothpaste, earplugs. True story. And so now when this says all means to eradicate them have been wholly unsuccessful, they have tried concentrated caffeine. They had to get an EPA permit for that. Didn't work. They tried.
Awake or
like what were they thinking? That really expanded the pop. Now it's 24 hours. They tried hydrated lime. Then another EPA wanted to use citric acid. Make sure I get the order right here. Yeah, and then and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but around the world, a lot of amphibians are succumbing to this fungus.
Yeah.
So they introduced the fungus because they had no, so which had it taken on, it would have killed the geckos and the skinks. Well, none of those are native anyway, so like, okay, well that'd be a bonus. It didn't work. So it's just a strange thing. Frogs all around the world are dying, and people are trying to keep them alive. And in Hawaii, they're trying to kill them and they can't. It's just bizarre. And now finally, it didn't go through because of the public outcry. But they proposed giving prizes to school kids for bringing in dead coqui frogs.
A bounty.
A bounty. So now this is where I volunteer. It's a national historical park. So every 2 feet there's some you got to be careful where you step and stay on the path. That kind of place. So you don't step on something sacred. This is Koloko Honokohau. Koloko Honokohau. Yep. And so, and then this gentleman is actually at a kind of a sister park a little further south. It's Honaunau. Is this park? We have 3 on the west coast. And this guy, he's a real character, and he's dressed in kind of the native cloak that they would use kind of for the cooler weather. And when I say cooler weather in Hawaii, of course, it's cooler when you go up the volcano. And so I don't know what possessed him to do this. He's just kind of a
A welcoming gesture.
Yeah. So my work at the park was removal of this called Christmas berry. It's also known as a Brazilian pepper tree. It's a huge problem in Florida. So you're familiar with it, right? Huge problem. Very adaptable. It can dry, wet, short roots. Although in that lava, you're not pulling it out. And it grows as kind of a shrub, a tree, because it's adaptable. This is Jake, a paid and yet underpaid worker, who was one of the guys on the crew. And so Jake is actually working on something. He was working on a grant from University of Hawaii that was looking at kind of, okay, how much effort does it take to clear this? So we were taking really precise data. You kind of sign in when you started, sign in when you finished, sign in when you drove, sign in when you dropped off, etc. And so they marked everything off in plots, and then we're going to write it up as to how many man hours does it take to clear an acre kind of thing. And so this is what they're doing. Now previous efforts, they cut it down and then they left. Well, it grows from the roots, right? I mean, so at least they had permission to what they call snip and spray, spray herbicide on the once they cut it. And so you can see the sawdust flying. This is down at the base. It's quite thick. And you have to be so careful because it's just solid lava that it's growing right over. So very kind of a safety issue, etc.
Could they do a controlled burn, or is that type of?
Control burns work really well. The problem is the like a couple of levels up, like administration wise, aren't interested in doing a controlled burn because this is right, it's like right there. It's kind of between town and the airport. You've got native vegetation that, would succumb. So we're literally cutting around a tree, right, as we're going kind of thing. But controlled burns work for this.
Yeah.
They weren't approved. Yeah, trust me, after 3 days out here, you're wishing that you're out there with a flame torch, right? This is a quarter right here, just to give you an idea of scale, right? So pretty massive. And I don't know how you get an appreciation, but it's very, very dense wood and really heavy wood. So each plot generated a pile, and each of those piles would have to be loaded, kind of overachievers here. And this was by far, this was the most difficult part of the job, because we tried a couple of different things, and you get like one of these trash cans full of stuff, and it's so you can't see, and you're trying to sort of walk to the mule, because you can't move the mule because you might run over some archaeological site, so it's got to stay on the path. So you could be on plot 19, you got to walk all through the other 18 carrying this thing, and hoping that you're not going to step into some hole, because I'll show you another picture of what the footing looked like. And then of course haul it away, and we dumped it into they rented a storage container that was a green storage container, so then they take it away and I guess chop it up. So yes?
A couple of slides ago you said you had to be careful not to cut or not to touch the lava. Is that just because it would damage the chainsaw?
Yes, yeah, the chain, yeah, which it would, like, exactly. Yeah, just for safety concern. Yeah, it's not gonna hurt the lava. Right, I mean, sure. Yeah, that's what I meant. Be careful because
I was just thinking there's enough lava
on
the island that can't be.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So here are a couple of shots that Jake sent me because I was there for however many months the semester is, right? And that was just part of the overall thing. And so, which was kind of frustrating because, I'm like, okay, see you later. It's like you're looking in where you've been. It's like, it's still there. So a couple months later they finished up. So here's plot 8 before, and here's plot 8 after, right? So pretty much completely cleared. Here's plot 6 before, and I don't know if you can see, this is a tree we kept, right? And so there it is. Right. So everything else is pretty much gone. So and see, here's the what I was talking about. And so some of these are loose, and some of these are not. So, it's good, if it's not loose, then you've got to not fall off of it. And if it is loose, you have to not step on it. And so it was really interesting. I mean, it was the hardest I've worked since I was a laborer in high school, easily. So I was actually in shape in May. And then you go back to the plate lunches, and it's amazing how quickly it goes away. But it made room for beautiful, this is called Myopilo. And I just think it's gorgeous. It's one of the ones we worked around, and it's in very limited supply on the Big Island. Amazingly, it's quite common within the park. Just one of those statistical things, I suppose. But it's this kind of makes it worthwhile. So I have time to tell you about eco islands. While I was in Hawaii, when the semester ended up, I had an opportunity to go to New Zealand and visit some friends there, that sort of thing. And I figured I'm halfway there because it's an 8-hour flight from here to Honolulu, and it's an 8-hour flight from Honolulu to Auckland. So I thought, okay, well, I'm halfway there. I couldn't convince Amy or the girls because they were thinking, if we were coming from Houston, no problem, but we're not going to give up time in Hawaii to go to New Zealand in the wintertime. I said, fair enough. So I just went over and I had no plan to do this. But out of the 5 friends I visited, 3 of them took me to, kind of these ecological areas that matched what I was working on. So I thought, oh, well, they're better to share with you. For instance, when I was there earlier, I don't know if you're familiar, I was there years and years ago, making the friends, and I got to visit this island, Tiritimaitangi, and it's originally was just brought in and grazed with sheep who just ate everything and just cleared it. And so it's a little island that's just off the coast, and so what they did was they came back in, they got rid of all the sheep and otherwise, and which is easy to do on a small island, right? Just kind of literally walk through it, trap and poison and all those things, and then replanted it, nearly 300,000 trees, making it, it's not just solid, right? They're open glades and things for different habitats. And it works really, really well. And so the island serves as a home to these very, very endangered takahe, which are revered. I mean, there's so few of these, they have names. You know, it's not like it's like Fred or probably something in Maori than Fred. But you know, and it works really well. It's a beautiful island, restricted access, of course, etc. But it doesn't have to be surrounded by water. So you can have these types of situations, this is where it was in the hills of the North Island. And this piece of property I've visited before, and my friend there has become kind of a self-taught naturalist. She's retired now, and she's converting a lot of her property kind of back to nature, if you will. And so, you know, and I took this picture because I have the same shot from 20 years ago, and it's just the lake, right? For instance, just to give you an idea. And so she still raises a few cattle, but you can see kind of here are the grazing areas, right? But then you've got some areas of what they call native bush that she's keeping in perpetuity in things called QE2 covenants. So no matter who ends up with the property, it's in writing that they have to just leave it. But not just leave it. So some people say, okay, that little patch over there is going to be left. Here, what they're doing, I mean, a lot of places, and what she's doing is she's fencing it off, going inside of the fence and clearing out all the mammals, right? And then it's just remarkable, and it works. I mean, just plain as day. The native bush comes back, and then the native animals come back. And so in this case, she's taking me to a place that she's fenced off. She hadn't quite gotten rid of all the animals. You can see the predator proof because you've got down here for the smaller stuff, and then the tape for the deer to keep because deer are so prevalent. And so what we're doing here is she's bringing me to this little kind of why she ever went in there in the first place to look. I have no idea, but in that little understory is this tiny. I mean, these are blades of grass to give you an idea. This tiny, just gorgeous, super rare orchid. I mean, you know, like the botanist in New Zealand just went all salivating when she showed him photos of that. So, you know, on hands and knees, elbows trying to take the photo. Here's some more of the fencing around this area. And so we took these stakes and we came down to the gate and went in here. And of course, they're not stakes like you get at Home Depot. They're some kind of, you know, ancient hardwood, which means they weigh about 5,000 pounds. And she weighs about 80 pounds. And, you know, this is not how I carry them. You know, kind of dragging them along. And so we make it to where we're going, and so there's this kind of boggy area. You can see kind of where the standing water starts, where these bigger plants are right here. And this is kind of mucky. She got a big kick out of it when I filled one of my boots with water. And she's sticking one of the stakes in. And what we're doing is she'd already planted this native grass. And then, because the deer are still in here, we came back and we were placing these here to keep the deer. She figured if we put them right next to the grass, the deer would say, "Oh, well, I don't want to walk over there." Wouldn't trample them, letting this kind of ball come back to the natural landscape. And of course, eventually she'll get rid of all the deer as well. And she's got traps, small traps everywhere. They have feral stoats, rats, and amazingly, she thinks, in her opinion, and you know, self-taught naturalists sometimes know as much as anybody, she thinks feral cats are causing as much damage as anything. Like, it's at the absolute top of her list.
She has a dog though, doesn't she?
She's got a lot of dogs. That was the pet dog that was with us, and she's got working dogs for the cattle. But not, I mean, she's okay with pet cats, like, you know, she's just feral cats. She's not crazy about it.
Indoors and declaws.
Yeah, exactly. On all these. So here down on the South Island and a more ambitious effort. And I went to one very similar to this in North Island, but it was went out in the rain. Don't have any photos to share with you. And so this is a big operation. This took, as you can imagine, a lot of people. You know, landowners donating property, volunteers, government agencies buying in, etc. And so what they're doing here is they're allowing the native bush on the right side to go back to nature. And they've got these pest-proof fence, and they've got a little track that they run every morning to make sure, you know, a tree hasn't fallen over, because obviously a rat could scurry over etc. It's a never-ending process, because apparently a hawk or something can pick up a rat and be startled and drop it, and the rat survive the fall, etc., etc. And see, I don't know if you can see here, next photo maybe better, kind of a slick tube, very difficult for something that's climbing up this wire to cross, right? And then just, you know, as another precaution up here, you've got an electric line to keep the series still. It's a massive kind of undertaking. And then everything, so basically you're creating an island, and now you come in and you trap and poison and get rid of all the mammals. And it's just, like I said, it's just remarkable. One example they gave us was that one ornithologist used to come out and do bird counts. And the ornithologist, I don't know if it was a male or female person, would play the recording of one sex or the other, and then the mate would hear that and come over to that part of the forest, and then they could hear the calls. Well, now this has been so successful, they've had to come up with a different strategy, because now they play the call and they're like, oh, another bird, you know, because there's so many of those, you know, native birds that have kind of just been prolific. So it's been a really neat study. And of course, politics really, you know, are playing havoc with the future of this stuff, because, you know, people get their feelings hurt and et cetera. But so far, so good. Finally, you know, we have so many problems just locally, right? Like nutria, giant salvinia, and I figured I didn't even have time to tell you about some other things that, you know, help remove red mangrove, and pickleweed, and some other things that are there. But have you heard about this? This was in the cover of the Houston Press in September. A Cambodian weed. Well, my first thought, of course, was quite different about what the article turned out to be.
I'm trying to get some.
But just glancing at it, I noticed the word invasive, and so I picked up a copy, and it is a fascinating story, and it's about this plant, water spinach, that was brought over by Cambodian refugees. And they have they've settled in south of Houston, and I don't know how to pronounce the town, so Rosharon. Rosharon, just like it's spelled. Rosharon. So they have a community in Rosharon, and so brought it, and then these people that came over are not, apparently they're not people that, you know, their parents their family moved over and they moved over to join them. These are people that just had to get out of Cambodia. And the only thing they knew in Cambodia was raising this stuff and selling it and using it to you know, for income and food. And so they brought it with them. And they planted it around Rosharon. And that's where it's growing. And so, as you can imagine, turns out that it's easy to grow. And it's just going like crazy. The problem is, it's going like crazy and it's not native and there's nothing to keep it in balance. And so, you know, now that it's there, what do we do? And so, you know, it's just, you know, it's got for this case, it's kind of, you know, the cultural aspect, the economical aspect, you know, and of course, the invasive species aspect. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, what I'd leave to you is to sort of time-wise, whether we have time for discussions, questions, and all that stuff.
I thought it was a fashion show.
Yeah, he has to get a sample.
Yeah, I think Kat was disappointed. She thought there was going to be shopping tips.
You got those at Kohl's?
No, I got.
Made in Hawaii, USA.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, Yeah, these, I mean, I got these, you know, sort of, in Hawaii, this is equal to you wear these anywhere. Equal to a tux or farmland.
Got two full questions. for you, Trey.
Yes.
Did you try surfing?
Oh, no. So does that knock out the second question?
No.
Okay.
Just curious, as we know here in the South, fire ants.
Yes.
Is there a problem on the island or islands that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm just.
Because those are an invasive species here, aren't they?
Yes.
They are.
They came up
Oh, yeah,
on
yeah.
banana boat.
Yeah,
From
so
Brazil.
yeah, and you know, in fact, their limit is limited by cold ground temperature in the winter.
But that line is
So,
moving further
and
north.
of course,
Yes.
one of my students just talked about an article about bats moving further away because of the temperature changes, like in the Midwest, and so yeah, they're creeping up too, but not that I know of.
That's good for them.
Yeah, yes, it is. I don't know, you know, and I tried to ask people and that sort of thing, like what's the most invasive species. Of course, everybody's got their own opinion and everything, so I don't know if there's really one. There's a website called the 101 Most Invasive Species, but you know, a lot of the ones, even in the top like 15, you've never even heard of. And there's stuff around here. I called a lady, you know, to share with you. She works for like Texas Department of, you know,
Parks and Recreation.
Parks and Recreation, or you know, in the wildlife kind of natural resource division, and she said something called Kogan grass, which I had never heard of. And not only is it an invasive species and really bad deal with her, they sell it at nurseries. So, you know, there's one thing when it's invasive, but like pythons are a big problem in Florida. In fact, one of my students told us about a python hunt where they organized people and didn't even make a dent, by the way, as it turns out. And so, but it's still legal to have a python, right? So there's some things like, thankfully, it's, you know, and some places are better than others, and you know, we have states versus federal. Like New Zealand, no way. A snake's not even coming to a zoo exhibit, right? I mean, it's just no way. Like just no, none. What's that?
They don't have any snakes at all?
No snakes at all. And I maybe should have mentioned this, sort of, you know, as early on, and as the continents moved around, New Zealand and Hawaii would have broken off from the other land masses before mammals, there's some dispute, either before mammals evolved or before they really, you know, evolved to a point where they were successful enough to not go extinct, because there are some little tiny vole-like skulls they found in New Zealand, sort of thing. But certainly no natives, except in both Hawaii and New Zealand. We got a couple of species of native bats, and of course the marine mammals, but they can travel. Just the opposite for them, either or. So yeah, no native, yeah, so they're not really much in the way of amphibians, reptiles, or mammals. It's just, you know, lots of native birds, and of course native plants. And then depending on who you talk to in Hawaii, you've got native, and then you've got what are called canoe plants or Polynesian plants, which came so long ago before the idea of invasive or introduced ever became. They're kind of considered okay. And then you had the missionaries bring things over, right? Because they were some of the first people over. And then you have the more modern. I mean, some of this stuff's been introduced like in the 80s. Like there's a orange spotted day gecko that came over in the 80s, and they're everywhere. I mean, they're just these fat little, you know, gorgeous to take a photo, and you know, you can leave out a little jelly and they'll come lick it, and you know, so, oh, they're so cute for a tourist, and then you go home and you know, they eat the insects that the birds want. So, it's a constant. No, they're just everywhere.
Well, no, but how did it get there? I mean,
Oh,
it was brought over as a pet or-
it just said it was brought over in the 80s. It didn't say, you would think so. I mean, I don't think somebody would have, even in the 80s, would have brought it over and just let it go on purpose, but.
Well, no,
you know,
but I'm thinking
they did
they
with
have come in a
mongooses.
load of lumber from South America or something.
Oh, Yeah, I just didn't read that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because they have, so many different things came over and, from different ways. I mean, some people brought things over on purpose and so on and so forth. Your personal experiences, yes.
As a result of your work there,
Yeah.
what would be the next step for you if you were going to continue this work or this research?
That's a good question. I mean, with specifically the Christmas berry, we cleared a small area within the park, and of course it's all over the island. You've got other things that I worked on. We didn't work on that every day. Like on Fridays, because they cleaned the vehicles and things. On Fridays, I did different things. Like some Fridays we went out and looked for red mangroves. Some Fridays we looked for something called ACOA. And it's just such an amazing issue. So you could, for me personally, I could go try the education policy route, or kind of just becoming more knowledgeable here, like with the Coven grass, trying to educate people around here. Hey, we have enough problems without bringing stuff like this in, I suppose. Yeah.
So are there any of the plants, the native plants, that can outcompete this one? Okay.
There's not enough clearing and then follow-up research, because we talked about it while I was out there. And for instance, one of the other guys on the crew that are not in photos of, Joe's, said he's seen in other places and other times areas they've cleared, he's seen the native grasses come back.
Okay.
Faster
So it's
than
not just pure.
faster than the invasive grasses that, of course, are there as well.
Right, but I'm thinking, you've left this bare spot, what's gonna happen, So are
Sure.
they planting stuff?
Sure, and I didn't show you any photos, but of course, on the other side of the park, they've planted native grasses in some areas in kind of rows, and it's kind of frustrating because I'm going through there and I'm snipping and spraying these ACOA plants that are just, and they make hundreds and hundreds of seeds. So you're trying to, and the seeds are dry, so you're trying to, as you cut it, you're trying to kind of make it fall into a bucket and scrunch it down so you get the seeds in the tree, and then spray it. And I realized that I'm cutting regrowth, right? So somebody's done this before and didn't spray it. It was really frustrating. And you know what else I found out? The regrowth invariably was harder to remove than just the single plants. So it's almost like, hey, they're trying to get rid of me. I'm going to hunker down. So I said, yeah, it was just amazing because a single plant I could usually pull out, and the ones that you could tell because it was a shoot coming off and there was a cut place. I knew I was going to have to get down there with loppers and chop. Yopon.
Yeah. My dad was trying to cut a little red oak, dig up a red oak for me to bring from Dallas to Houston. And the one that he had picked out, because it was pretty in the fall, and he went down to get it, and the nutria had cut down a tree about this big around and apparently drug it down to the creek. And so he was like, you're not getting that one. I can't dig that up. So it's like so the trees that he wants to keep, he's had to put chicken wire around them to keep the nutria away.
Wow.
Is there no commercial use for the wood?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
There is, but it's Hawaii, so having a fire is, it makes great firewood for grilling and things like that, but it just doesn't seem.
I was gonna say.
In other words, it's not a balance.
It's not big enough to make lumber.
No, but furniture.
Oh, not lumber, but firewood, and I like grilling wood.
Like a bush.
And I don't know if you saw, like the piles
Were pretty big.
Yeah.
Well, the piles were logs and branches, and the logs themselves, and it's really heavy, that's what made the carry them heavy. It's really dense wood, and apparently just fantastic. And of course, the park is just. It's so much red tape. I worked for the Park Service. I was volunteering here. I worked for the Park Service in the summer before, and oh my God! By the time August comes, I'm so ready to get out of there, because just 3 months of their red tape is enough. I can't imagine working full time with the organization, because there's just, you know, so many spoons in the pot and everything. So, you know, you can't use it for firewood. We have to make it go away. And I asked them, I said, have you thought about selling it as grilling wood, and then you could use the money to either fund educational efforts or fund, and maybe that's, you were talking about what I could do, maybe that's something that would be more up my alley, because I'm looking for something a little less strenuous. part two, because I feel like I kind of, you know, I pushed my luck there with my knees and such. I think I've done it, I've been there, and I really, you know, I don't know about you, whatever you teach, but I felt like I was, you know, after years of just basically being in the classroom, I was out there actually doing field work. We were, you know, collecting data, and not that we can't do that here, but I just hadn't done it, especially as, you know, the aquatic stuff.
Get your pickup truck and a sign saying firewood for sale. I mean, sit on the side of the road with your lawn chair and your little umbrella.
It's all dust.
It seems like there ought to be an industry for something made of wood.
Real furniture.
Oh, and there are lots of wood products. Lots of wood products.
When they do the people that need to buy could be making spoons for children.
I'm with you, and unemployment in Hawaii is amazing, and the cost of living is much more expensive. I didn't show you one slide. It showed the price of gas was $4.68, and I went back and looked it up, and it was on that same day here. It was $3.68. So, I mean, 1 gallon of gas is just $1. Over the course of living there a few years, would be a lot of, you know, a big difference, and so on and so forth. So renting was pretty reasonable, and they suffered a lot more in the economic downturn than we did. Of course, you know, this part of Texas, and especially this part of Texas, we haven't suffered nearly like a lot of the other parts of the country. Hawaii, of course, it's kind of like the food web that's based on sunlight. You know, the whole state economy comes back to tourism. Well, when the people on the mainland and other parts of the world have an economic downturn, they don't come visit. They're not bringing the money in, and so everybody suffers. They were still suffering from that. So rent was fairly reasonable. To buy a place, we could have bought a place. I would never believed it except I saw the place, right? Would have been no more than buying a place, similar place here. Ocean view, breeze blowing through it. And we really looked into it, and then we realized, we can't afford to get back. I mean, a ticket is $1,000, you know, right now, and that's going up. And so with the price of fuel and everything, and until Danny gets this thing going with the algae, I mean, it's going to continue to, you know, that's $4,000 for us.
You know, why would you want to say that?
Yeah. Okay.
Surfing's not a bad idea.
Let me wrap this up with that comment right there, okay? Okay, you can't make this stuff up. I was trying to input something into my Lone Star, right? And I couldn't do it. It wouldn't accept it. It said type in your employee ID number. So I typed it in, and it said invalid, invalid code. And so I did it again, and I went and saw Joan, and she said, well then, you know, work it up the ladder and talk to a guy assisting me. He goes, well, I'm gonna have to turn you over to somebody else. So Joanne called me, and so I finally found out, apparently, according to the system, until yesterday, I was still on sabbatical. Leave with pay. Why I was here last semester, I have no idea. So, you had it right. I could have just stayed right there. Y'all could have just covered for me a little bit. The checks would have just kept coming. It would have been a beautiful thing. So, if you're interested, the community college there on that side of the island is expanding. So, anyway, yeah, it's a gorgeous place, and if if you're looking for more information about it, and if you're really interested in these little booklets, you can keep those. Those are invasive plant guides put out by, it's a combination of HARC and the Galveston Bay Estuary Program, and you can get some more if you're interested. And they just, I've noticed, come out with an animal guide as well. Haven't gotten any of those in yet. And of course, if you're interested in just going to visit Hawaii, I've now been to the 4 main islands. If you have any, looking for suggestions, but it's pretty simple to plan a vacation there. Again, once you buy your ticket, you're pretty much set. So is there anything else?
Well, let's thank Trey one more time.
Oh, thank you very much.